Hello and welcome to Upper Pen. My name is Dakota, and today I'm speaking with Caitlin Rozakis about her two of her books, Dreadful, and an upcoming book called the Grimoire Grammar School Parent-Teacher Association. It's quite a mouthful.
It I have already mixed feelings about the title. On one hand, a lot of people have liked it. It's very descriptive. And on the other hand, every time I have to type it, I'm like, oh, Dreadful was such a better title.
It was so short.
So short.
It's a very funny title though to me, so I get why it was chosen.
Yeah, no, I have no one to blame but myself. As for so many of the things that drive me crazy in life. Uh, but I think it is a good title, but it's a mouthful.
That's okay. Eventually, I'm sure it'll get shortened to some shorthand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly just calling it Grimoire at this point,
Oh.
or if you just the Grimoire Grammar School PTA. But it's the length alone is part of what's funny about it.
It
So,
is. So before we go too far, what is the Grimoire Grammar School PTA about?
it's basically Big Little Lies goes to magic school.
Ooh.
It is about well, a lot of us grew up on magic school stories. They're very popular. The protagonist is almost always, a child who is invited to a secretive magic school, and they go off and have this journey of discovery, of finding out that the world was secretly way more magical than they thought it was, and they have to deal with teachers and bullies and learning magic and usually horrifying tests and weird sports and all that kind of stuff. But the protagonist is almost always, the kid. And I mean, I grew up on those and they're super fun. And I always, secretly wanted to be chosen to go off and learned how to cast fireballs and everything. And then I had a kid.
Ooh.
And dealing with modern parenting and school systems, and I would like to just have the parenthetical here that like the teachers and the administrators go through so much crap and they're working so hard and that's such a hard job, and in general they're doing an amazing job, but just the reality of modern life, schools are ridiculous. The whole thing is completely insane. And I started thinking about, so what would it be like for your kid to get that letter? So this is about two perfectly normal, mundane parents whose daughter gets bitten by a werewolf and is invited to a secretive magic academy, um, and as a kindergartner, and then they have to deal with the other parents.
Oh, okay. So beautiful. It's politically difficult and magically difficult and
Absolutely, because I mean, I've been on the PTA
oh,
for over like for gosh, like a decade now, basically. Um, and yeah, that's a thing.
oh, just from movies or like shows showing a PTA, I'm like, oh God, that seems like so much drama.
There can be a lot of drama. Uh, and I mean, like also like some of my closest parent friends I also met
Yeah.
through the PTA, and that can be great too. It can be very supportive. It can be a lot of tempest in a teacup, and it can also be like super serious and like because I mean, when you think about it, like parents in the last couple years, kids have been through a lot. I don't think this was quite as bad for my parents, but I mean, I've been in PTA meetings that were dealing with about COVID precautions and the people who thought it was too much and the people who thought it wasn't enough,
Yeah.
about dealing with school shooting, and like, all the different lockdown drills. And again, like the people who think it's too much, people who think it isn't enough. And it is in fact sometimes a life or death decision, but you also in the same meeting are going to be discussing class gifts and whether or not like what we are trying to do for the gala theme. And you'll have the same meeting will involve the most trivial of things and also the most serious of things at the same time. And people and like generally people do differentiate between the levels of severity, but that doesn't mean they don't really care about who is going to be running the book fair this year.
It's very important, you know.
It is. Well, the scholastic versus independent bookseller argument
Ooh,
is in fact a major argument that that happens every year.
I didn't even know that was an argument. I thought
It
Scholastic
is.
was the only one.
There are a bunch of political reasons why people, I mean, if nothing else, the wanting to have a local independent
Yeah.
bookseller who's based in the community and everything. There's a lot of good feelings about that, but there's Scholastic for a little while was going really hard into non-book items, and
Yeah.
so there would be a lot like people were like, we just want them to be able to buy books. We don't want them to like buy all this random toys and crap. And as I said, like it gets very like, people can spin themselves up for forever. Now you add fireballs.
Oh gosh. It takes on a whole new level when bullying includes, maybe transforming someone into something.
Hmm. Yes, it does, doesn't it? That would definitely never happen in this book.
Oh my gosh, now I can't wait to read it. Because I've hit a point in my life where I no longer identify with younger protagonists and I want to know what their parents are doing about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots to be said for the YA boom, and it's definitely like I still read stuff in that's YA too. There's a lot of inherent drama to young people figuring out the world for the first time. But the vast majority of our lives are not actually spent in that point. And I mean, it's a major inflection point. It usually determines a lot of what happens with the rest of your life. It's very important and everything. But a lot of us, that was some time ago, and other stuff is still continuing to happen in our lives.
Yes. Uh, kind of tangentially related, there's a YouTube or TikTok guy who does um the parents of these people. He does like trying to deal with them on a day-to-day level. So I think it's
Haven't,
like a nice pairing.
yeah.
But
I mean, there's, I think, an inexhaustible well of humor to be mined there,
yes.
mining well mixed metaphors. There's a reason why I do writing.
And choosing words carefully,
Yes,
right?
where you can go backspace, backspace, backspace.
Is the Grimoire Grammar School PTA going to be as funny as Dreadful? Because it already sounds like it is.
It is, I think it is as funny, but I think it is a little more heartfelt, if that
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense. Like
Yeah.
there are the climax is definitely not as farcical. I'd say like Dreadful was a full-on farce. Of the people like in theater, it would involve a lot of people running in and out of doors and slamming them behind them. Uh, Grimoire is still very satirical, but is not as farcical. There's
Okay.
definitely a lot that is funny about it. At least I think so. Other people seem to think so too, at least in the early review. So hopefully people will agree. Um, but it's the the climax is definitely more serious. And I mean, there's certainly more elements of I don't know. There's more autobiographical stuff in this one. This one is probably closer to my heart, uh, which makes it all the more nerve-wracking because it is somewhat more personal. And
Right.
I mean, obviously, there are, as far as I know, no dark prophecies involving my kids' school. Uh,
Yet.
the uh, one of the I actually dedicated it to the teachers. And my point was that all the places where the teachers and administrators do wise and kind things, those are genuinely a lot of it was inspired by real life teachers. And all the places where they make really terrible decisions was because plot had to happen.
Right. Oh, goodness. I'm glad you live in a not very exciting school district.
I mean, yes and no, because like as I said, the we had we had a serious SWAT incident
Mm.
about a mile from like maybe 2 miles from the school, which I live in a dense urban area. So that amount of distance was a canal and a highway and several blockades between what was going down and my kids' school. Like the kids were never in any our kids were never in any serious jeopardy. There was a school next to where this was all going down that was terrifying for everybody involved. Uh, but the WhatsApp thread that day, I got no work done that day and gained at least 20 gray hairs and probably took 6 months off my life. Like I'm not going to say everything was okay in the end because it wasn't. No kids were harmed. Uh, our kids were always fine. They didn't know why they weren't allowed to leave campus, but like we went into full lockdown.
Yeah.
And it was like the thing is we live in a world that is in fact scary. Uh
Oh, goodness.
and there was a lot of discussion after that about security and how to balance like what we thought was necessary. And people were very scared and angry, and it was vehement. And I think the school handled it really well, but it was like some of those meetings were contentious.
Yeah, anytime anything with your kids is involved, I can't imagine.
Yeah. But on the plus side, again, I am not super worried about my kid getting bit by werewolves. That's great.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Um, the Grimoire book takes place in a more modern era too, right?
Yes, the Grimoire is contemporary fantasy. It's set in Connecticut, and it is a secret world fantasy. So it's theoretically happening here and now. There's just, a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background that none of us are aware of. Uh, but it's a full on like theoretically happening like right now kind of setting,
Okay.
which is fun because I get to like I think my very favorite parts are the WhatsApp exchanges. So there are just what whole WhatsApp threads in here, which was also super fun because we ended up going through and getting like I my publisher we went to a lot of detail trying to figure out which emojis to use because like there's the obvious ones, but then like different people have like emojis in their name, their because
Yeah.
it's a WhatsApp thread. Uh, and it's super fun because every parent I know, like that the WhatsApp thing, when it that you hear the WhatsApp notification, you're just like, oh no, what just happened?
Oh, goodness. Well, transitioning away from modern issues,
Absolutely.
Dreadful is the first book I've ever read by you, and it is hilarious.
Thank you.
Um, so there's a Dark Lord, and he's not really all that evil, it would appear.
Well, he was. So I've got the standard edition here. You've got one of the special editions, which is awesome on your
Yes,
shelf. Oh,
broken
I think
binding.
I forgot to hold up Grimoire. Ooh.
Ooh.
Uh, so yes, the way I usually describe it is Dreadful is about an evil wizard who loses his memory and has to fake his way along with his own evil plan. So he basically this guy wakes up and he is in what is very clearly an evil wizard's lair, and things are on fire, and he doesn't have any eyebrows and he doesn't have any memory and he has no idea how he got here, and he completely freaks out because obviously at any second Dark Lord whoever is going to come crashing through and be very upset, possibly with him, because, Lara's on fire. Uh, and so he freaks out, and then gradually it dawns on him that he is, in fact, the Dark Lord in question, and he has no idea what he's doing.
The moments where he's first realizing who he might be and he's looking at his clothes and he's like, these are very impractical clothes. Like, what am I wearing? Yeah.
I mean, minor spoilers. So I work in marketing, and the secret hidden theme of Dreadful is branding.
Yes.
Um, in that he does like he spends a good chunk of the first quarter of the book or so going through and being like, what was I thinking? Why did I pick any of this stuff? This stuff is ugly. This stuff is impractical. What was I thinking? And he slowly realizes that on one hand, his former self was in fact a jerk and often incredibly short-sighted because he was so selfish and that blinded him to a lot of things, but that he wasn't always necessarily wrong for what he was trying to do. Um, and one of the themes of this book is everyone who you meet is not who they initially appear to be. Uh, because everyone lives in a very dangerous world in which they are trying to protect themselves by having a certain persona. And some of those personas are farther away from the actual person's reality than others. There's differences in the distance, but all of them have a certain way of portraying themselves to the world that they're trying to get a certain effect. And that his previous self was, in fact, like to be able to get people to respect you as an evil dark lord, you need to do some stuff that is kind of like wildly impractical, but it's because it's what people expect. You're kind of trapped into it.
Yeah.
So I mean, way back when, because I'm in my 40s, in the bad old good old days of the internet, there was this one list that went around on like Usenet, the evil overlords handbook, that had like a list of things that I would not do if I were an evil overlord. And a whole bunch of them are like, it's all funny, obviously, but there's a lot of them that like we know, knowing tropes, that killing off they'll trying to murder the baby is going like heel turn automatically never works. It just makes them grow up to want to hate you. But at the same time, there is something to the if you leave the baby alive, they're still going to grow up to hate you. So,
Yeah.
okay, what do you do with this? When you have like deposed a previous monarch and you've got this baby prince, what do you do with the baby prince? If you raise them as your own, eventually they figure out that you murdered their parents and want to hate you. If you murder them, you're evil, and possibly the nurse maybe will sneak them out and substitute, a fey changeling or something. So, and then they'll grow up and hate you. If you try to like send them far away, like somehow it always is going to come back on you. So there is usually some sort of logic to it, but at the same time, guttery torches are inherently less good light than like a nice beeswax candle is.
Yes, true. One of the funnier moments is when he's getting to know his minions for the first time, apparently. Uh,
It's so awkward to like, I mean, you always have that thing where you meet somebody, you know that you've met them before, and you can't remember their name. And you're trying to get your way through the conversation without admitting that you don't remember, like, especially, I don't know if you ever had with like coworkers where you've met them a couple of times and you've forgotten their name, but you've already met them, like you've known them for 6 months
yeah.
and you can't remember who this person is, and it's super awkward to ask now.
You're in too deep now. You
You're
have to
too
just
deep. And I am terrible at names. I'm so bad. And I'm honestly like on the scale of face blind to politician, I'm like here. I'm not like actually disabled face blindness, but I am really, really bad at managing to retain facial features. Uh, and so I do this all the time, and it's very, very embarrassing. One of the things that I found an interesting thing I learned about myself during the everyone was masking phase of COVID is that it did not seriously impact my ability to recognize people because I was not using their faces. Like I am going off of hairstyle. So when people change the hair significantly, it messes me up really
Oh,
badly.
goodness.
Um, I was going off of like mannerisms and voice and context. So I'm also so bad. And so for anybody watching this, if I ever meet you in a different context than I first met you, I didn't not recognize you because I'm snubbing you. I just genuinely cannot process that you are in a different place than I first met you in. I'm so sorry.
It's kind of like when kids first see their teachers outside of school.
Yep. And it's not like I don't think they belong there. Like it's
Right.
especially awkward when you meet somebody who it would be insulting to them to be surprised that they're there. Like, you meet your dental hygienist at the farmer's market or something. And it's like, yes, of course I believe that, person who is a service provider to me is allowed to go to the farmer's market. Uh, but I you're not in the dentist office. There's no way I'm recognizing you. Like I'm just if you say who you are, I will be delighted to see you, and I will remember the details about their dog. I will remember the last
Yes.
conversation we had. I will remember about their kids. Like all the stories, they're there. Will not recognize them.
My problem is recognizing someone's name. I do not know your name. I'm sorry. I'm never going to get it.
I wish it were not such an incredible security problem of wearing name tags all the time.
I know.
Like I don't actually want total strangers to know what my name is. There's badness there, and I don't actually want to mandate that everyone has to always work. But like one of the things I love about conventions is the name badges.
Yes.
And you will write it exactly the way you want me to recognize. Like it's not like you will write the nickname that you want me to call you by. Yes, please.
And usually if it's a convention and they're there from like a company or something, it
And they'll
has their
have where they're
logo.
from too. And then you're like, I know what context I met you in. This is great.
Oh, goodness. But Dreadful is very much this whole thing, right?
It is. I mean, I think that's part of why it does work is that, again, it's very, like, it's all fantastical, but it's in some ways very relatable.
Yes. The princess is also
Yes.
one of these people where there's an expectation, and it seems you like to play with expectation in
I
this book.
do. I really like to play with expectations. Uh, I mean, I love tropes. Like, don't like because what I was aiming for here is not making fun of the fantasy tropes because I genuinely love them. Uh, but and the same way with Grimoire, like I am not trying to actually say that the foibles of modern parenting are like, oh, everyone's stupid that they do these things that everyone does. Uh, but they're humans are inherently ridiculous. Like we are hilarious. We do the most like just incredibly stupid, self-defeating, whimsical, weird, just like odd things, but they're very like a lot of us do a lot of them. And I think that's inherently funny.
One of the minor spoilers for the princess is she's pretty vain, right? As many people are. And so she has a ring that makes her pretty.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't even going for that she's voluntarily wearing it.
Her parents
Her
gave it
parents
to
are
her,
making
right?
because you
Yeah.
are not allowed to be a princess who is not beautiful. Like, I mean, absolutely every fairy tale. The princess is the fairest in the land. And if you have managed to produce one of your children is not sufficiently fair, that reflects very badly on those parents now, doesn't it? So yeah, she is stuck whether she wants or not, wearing a glamour all the time because she is letting her family down if she is not sufficiently attractive.
It's funny though, because she takes it off at one point and she's no like
She's just
normal.
normal. She's just like she's just like she's not like hideous or anything. She's just a normal person. Like the vast majority of us are not models. We are not like the standards of beauty of fairest of the land in the land. Uh, she's just normal. She's got lovely frizzy hair. It's not a particularly interesting color. She's got a normal face that is not hauntingly beautiful. She's got a normal figure that is not perfectly svelte and willowy. She's just, and like your eye would pass over her. If you liked her, you would probably I someone who fell in love with her would probably find her to be beautiful the way that the
Yeah.
vast majority of us who don't date Hollywood people find our beloveds to be attractive. But no one's going to fool themselves into saying like, oh yes, she is absolutely the epitome of beauty. She is beauty, she is grace. Uh, she's just a normal person who wants to get through her day.
And they're really the two main characters, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty big supporting cast who is a lot of fun. Uh, but I mean, it's Gav is absolutely the central character. And then yeah, Alyosha is a coming in second as the main supporting character here. And then we've got a whole bunch of assorted castle folk and townsfolk and villains and would-be heroes who are not nearly as helpful as they think they are going to be.
Yes. My question is, did you ever want to play with whose perspective it was from? Because it's so strange, right?
I mean, sometimes, but I think it was in some ways keeping it locked in gave me a lot more tools as an author in some ways. In that it would be easier to show some things from other perspectives, but once you shift perspectives, it becomes much harder to hide some things.
Yes.
And this particular book, I have a lot of people have secrets, and Gav has a number of secrets of his own that are surprises to himself. Because he doesn't remember, it very much lets like from the very technical perspective, it lets me control the pace of the information
Mhm.
because I could control at what point the reader discovers things because I kept so tightly in Gav's head, we discover things generally when Gav discovers them.
Mhm.
And so it also allows you to gradually become aware of I mean, I don't think it's too much of a surprise that he's somewhat of an unreliable narrator because he has no idea what's going on for like the first half of the book. He never has any idea what's going on. And slowly he does get some idea what's going on and starts to make somewhat better decisions as he gets more information. But if I switch into anyone else's head, they know things because they remember what happened before whatever it was that caused Gab to lose his memory. Uh, so if I switch to Eliasha, that would tell us a whole lot of information very quickly that I didn't want to necessarily reveal that early on.
Okay.
It is a perspective is such a fun thing to play with as an author. Uh, and the things that have been released thus far have been single perspective stuff. A thing I'm working on right now that I can't talk about yet, but that is multiple perspectives, and it is in some ways it's easier because it gives you more ways to dole out information, but in other ways it is harder because you have to be very thoughtful from scene to scene about who in any scene that both people are or multiple people are in, who gets to control the narrative in that scene really changes how the reader perceives what's going on. So it's a fun tool, but it is definitely in some ways more work.
Are you a heavy plotter beforehand then? Like, do you kind of
I
know the beats?
I have the worst process. I'm a very heavy outliner.
Mhm.
Um, but I also do a ton of work in revisions.
Mm.
So I need to know where it's going to be able to get there. But then once I get there, sometimes I change my mind about where it was going or how to get there. But I somehow cannot seem to figure that out until I'm all the way through, which
Yeah.
is enormously time wasting and incredibly frustrating. But I'm I have written several books now, and it seems to happen almost every time. So apparently, this is just what happens, and I hate it, but it works.
I think you kind of have to write yourself into that position though, like to know that
Yeah,
it's not working there.
that's kind of so. Like for example, with Dreadful, I wrote the whole thing and then rewrote the back third of the book. Like the back third of the
Okay.
book is almost entirely different. Uh, so for one thing, originally Eliasha, who again, minor spoilers, she because she has the ability to take this ring on and off, she ends up sometimes playing the role of an apprentice without the ring versus princess with the ring on. Uh, those were originally two different people.
Oh.
Originally, so Cray Beetle, the valet, was not in the first draft. Originally, I had the princess and her illegitimate half sister, who was come to try to rescue her and was impersonating the valet. Which again, Gav didn't know, did not realize that this person was new to his staff.
Right.
Um, but so originally those were two different people. But the what because Eliasha was stuck in the prison cell, um, it ended up being really heavy with Eliasha in the first half of the book and
Mhm.
really heavy with the valet sister in the back half of the book, and not enough of I like it was just really unbalanced.
Oh,
So I
okay.
ended up having to very much rewrite a bunch of having to combine them very much changed the characters, her, her personality is sort of halfway point between the two of them. A lot of her motivations ended up having to change. A lot
Mhm.
of what she wanted out of the world had to change because it was a very different situation. So like there was a lot of like for the first half of the book, there's a lot of the same actions, but for different reasons.
Mhm.
Uh, but then also the last third of the book initially was much darker. It was
Oh,
much less of a farce.
yeah.
Uh, it, I won't say what actually happens in the book, but the original ending, what like the original climax was the king, the father, shows up with a besieging army, and there's a whole lot of pretty bad body horror actually, because Sarkodon did some real nasty stuff too, like some messengers, and a lot of emotional hinges were hinged on the relationship between the king and his daughters.
Mhm.
Um, and it was, I mean, it wasn't bad, but I got to the end and was like, this started off very light and humorous, and even when there's violence, it was very comic, like very like cartoon Warner Brothers style violence. Like stuff, people do die and stuff explodes and stuff, but it was played for laughs. And then towards the end, it got much grittier. And I got to the end, I'm like, was that what I actually wanted? That that wasn't the original goal. So I actually went back and completely removed the climax and put in an entirely different climax that was much more farcical and much fit the tone of what I started with much better. And I'm
Okay.
really happy I did it, but wow, that was not fun. Did not enjoy, but it needed to happen.
But you have the skeleton to use for something else of the other
Uh,
ending.
I don't know. I mean, I don't it was sufficiently dependent on what came before. Like I don't know how
Ah,
useful it would be. Uh but it just, yeah, like it just, like I got to the end and I'm just like, do I actually like this? No, no, actually I don't.
Oh my goodness. I I'm not sure if your short story covers this or not. The old boss, same as the new, or
Yes. So
swapped.
yeah, so just if you sign up for my newsletter, you will
Yes.
get a free copy of a short story set in the Dreadful universe, but only for another couple weeks. Then I'm going to take that and I'll move it over into the short story section.
Oh,
So you'll be able to just get it out in the open, because there is a different new short story for the Grimoire cast.
oh goodness. That's really very nice of you to do because that's like a fair amount of work to
It
write a short
is, but
story.
but also I really want people to sign up for my newsletter. It's a nice newsletter, I promise. It's like once a month. Um, I mean, some of it is that like social media is a very dicey way for people to keep on top of their
Yeah.
favorite authors. Obviously, a lot of them turn up the dials and up and down depending on whether you spend money with them or not. It's always random, like if you happen to log in, whether what you see. Platforms come and go. Uh, Most people are not going to like go check out their favorite authors' websites regularly to see if there are updates. So the newsletters are a really great way to find out what like where authors are going to be, whether they're going to be at a con, if they're going to be in your area, whether they've got a new short story out, whether they've got a novel coming up, that kind of stuff. So I want people to sign up for it, but if they're going to like let me email them, I feel like I owe them at least a present, you know?
That's fair. I mean, I'm taking it. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list of reads.
Yeah, and I mean, and all the current newsletter folks are also going to get the new free short story. Like you don't have to, like if you're already signed up, you get a new short story. And I mean, like I also sometimes put in like excerpts. After publication date, I'll put in like some deleted scenes from Grimoire. I've got a whole chapter about one of the like ridiculous sports where the chapter ended up really slowing things down and nothing super important happened in the chapter. So I cut it entirely because it was a pacing problem. But it's a fun chapter about wizard soccer.
I I I tell authors this all the time. Like, I would love to read the deleted scenes from some of these books because, like, it sounds funny or like it's a really cool concept. So I think that's a beautiful way to do it, is just throw it in a newsletter.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not the only one. A lot of people do like if they've got they'll have it on their blog or newsletters or that kind of stuff. Or some people do Patreon, which I'm not doing at the moment. If you sign it up, you get it for free. Yay. Uh, but it is because like there's definitely stuff that I cut not because like it's still canon in my head. Like there's the stuff that I cut because it's just not working. It introduces character details that don't make sense, or that like once I get somewhere else, I'm like, wait, no, I have to change this, that kind of stuff. That happens all the time. And there's stuff like what I was just saying with where it's like major edits, where it's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to I do this very consistently of having to change whole subplots and take multiple characters and switch them together because I always start off with too many characters. Like I always have too many characters and I hate then having to squish them down, but it always gets to the point where like people can't keep track and it my books aren't that long. You shouldn't need a map. Uh, but there's also the ones that you just cut because they didn't go anywhere. Like
Yeah.
it's a cute scene, but it just sort of slows everything down. And, or it's like, okay, well, that's a lot of details about that dress. That's more details about that dress than anybody really needs. And there's always that small number of people who do want it, but it doesn't really belong in the main narrative.
Yeah. And then sometimes if you expand upon something like a dress for too long, people expect something to be happening with this
Like this
dress.
should be significant for I just saw a play a week or so ago and I'm not going to name because I don't want to like shame and stuff, but there's one element of it that they repeated over and over and over again. It was this safety check. Uh, and I genuinely expected somebody to forget the safety check by the end and like fall to their death or something. And they didn't. It was irrelevant. They
Oh,
just did this one incredibly repetitive bit like 5 times, and it went nowhere. I think it was just to establish that these people were conscientious, but you could have done that in one. Uh,
yeah.
so it's like I don't know what the purpose of repeating that one snippet of dialogue that they do repeatedly throughout this play for no discernible reason.
I
And it's
think this,
possible it was a thing at one point and then it got edited
oh,
out. Like that happens a lot, especially in theater. As they go into previews, they will change stuff to make it work better. So it's entirely possible this is like a vestigial foreshadowing. But it goes nowhere. And like when I walked out, I'm like, wait a second.
you're still waiting for the safety check.
Yes, it was Chekhov's safety check.
Oh gosh. I think this is really where like an editor or some trusted reader can come in and be like, what is this?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean that's part like a lot of stuff that I've removed has been removed because other people told me, this scene, why is this here? What is it doing? I'm like, I really like scones. That's why. It's there because I like scones. And they're like, sweetie, I'm glad you like scones. That's not a good reason to spend a page and a half on this.
Would you like a scone? You can have one. Just take
I
the
mean,
thing
I
out.
I do like scones, it's true.
One of the other really silly things in Dreadful is garlic.
Yes.
How do you pick garlic of all things?
I honestly am not sure. That just come up a couple of times and I don't even remember why. A lot of it, so what's going on here is the town surrounding the castle has had a bit of a famine and they definitely did not have enough food. There was drought and there's just not going to be enough food for the winter. And it's a thing that I don't see come up in this kind of book very often, which is part of why I wanted to sort of just bury Gav in the what is it if you were actually are in charge of stuff that you have to deal with a lot of details that are super boring and not sexy evil in any way, but if you want food in March and you're in an agrarian society, then you better have got enough food in September to get through until the next harvest. Um, and so I think what might have happened, and do not hold me to this, but I think I may have looked up different kinds of droughts of like what would wipe out a wheat crop, and if the wheat crop did really badly, what what kinds of crops survive in those circumstances. And I think that was how I ended up with the garlic. But it was like I was specifically looking for something where you could end up with a bumper crop of something that is absolutely like, I mean, it's food, but it's not food.
Yeah.
Like you cannot survive on garlic. Like you might, your garlic production might be 3 times what it was last season. You got like such a great garlic harvest. That is not, again, if you're subsistence level farming, having 3 times as much garlic is not going to let anybody survive the winter. That is not enough calories. So that sort of just kicked off this whole thing. So then it just becomes a thing where they end up having a garlic festival to try to get other people to buy their freaking garlic in time for them to get enough money to buy actual food because we like being able to eat all winter. That's
Yeah.
great. Um, but because it's a farce, that doesn't go great because there's literally nothing that anyone does in this book that goes well for them.
That's true. It's just it made like the garlic being such a strange thing to think about having a festival around. It's funny, and I
It is.
can't get
There is a real
around.
garlic festival, by the way. Gilroy, California,
Yes.
the capital of the world, has a garlic festival with the garlic princess and garlic merchants and all that kind of stuff. Uh, but which I don't think I have been to, I was born in California, but I left when I was a baby. So it's possible my parents took me there while I was like 3 months old or something. But if not, I've never been to the Gilroy Garlic Festival. People really like to tell me about it. Uh, I did my tiny bit of research about it. I have driven through Gilroy, and it does, in fact, smell like garlic. I think we were
Ugh.
in there in like June. You can smell it. Like it is allium, like whoa.
Oh, I can't imagine getting it out of your pores or like your hair.
I would guess that it doesn't come out.
But you're so good at crafting funny, and I genuinely appreciate funny.
It's we're in a weird period of time. And I don't think anyone's having a good time. Um, and I mean, like that was part of how I ended up writing this book. Was originally I had in the time in which I wrote Dreadful, I had originally planned to write something totally different that I may or may not ever come back to. That was much darker and grittier and involved like a really messed up romantic relationship and was dealing with like the legacy of colonialism and those are all important themes that other people have done really, really well. I don't know whether I would have pulled it off or not, honestly. Maybe I would have. I don't know. Because I couldn't get past page 3. And like I just can't, and like I had this thing outlined. Like it was like I had a full plot outline. I had all the characters, all of their backgrounds. I had all this world building. I've got like 20 pages of notes about this book. And it every time I tried to write and I knew exactly what was supposed to happen in this first chapter. Like I knew what was going to happen, and I still couldn't get past like the third page. And I finally realized that it was that I didn't want to be in this world. Like I didn't actually want to be there. It wasn't a fun place to be. Um, and I think there absolutely is a huge need right now for very serious, thoughtful fiction about dealing with the whole host of stuff that we are dealing with right now. Uh, but I didn't want to be the one writing it right at this moment. Like I just, from a mental health perspective, could not stay in that space the way you have to. Because I mean, it takes years to write a book and then years to edit. And I didn't have an agent at that point, so I knew I would be years of querying
Oh, yeah.
and then submitting, and then if somebody picked it up, then editing with them and promoting. And it's like minimum 5 years, probably a lot longer, that you're going to be living in this imaginary world you've created. And I just couldn't. And I realized that the things that I was reading and that I was most happy about having read was the lighter, fluffier stuff, which doesn't mean that there aren't a whole lot of ideas that snuck into this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about toxic masculinity, and it's about walking back from the worst thing you've ever done, and it's about what is forgivable and what isn't. But it's got a real nice sugar candy coating on it.
It's very palatable.
It is. So like I just sneak right under your defenses, then shiv you in the ribs.
Oh, goodness. Are you working on anything that you can talk about that's coming up?
I wish I could. What I can tell you is that there is I am under contract for a third book. It is on my editor's desk right now, but they are sitting on the announcement until a little bit closer to a publication date.
Okay.
So there you have one thing you can buy right now and have right today. You have one thing that will be available on May 27th, and there is absolutely definitely going to be a book that's coming out in May of 2026. I just can't talk about it right this moment, probably for another like week or two. And then I am, I think, 7 chapters into the next thing after that that I also cannot talk about right now.
Is it already purchased?
No, that one is not already purchased, but we've had some discussions, and I'm reasonably sure that it's going to go somewhere.
Perfect. Well,
Um,
I'm glad.
Actually, the other thing that if you go on my website, I also have another pen name, Catherine Beck. So if you like the contemporary fantasy of Remark Grammar School, uh, I wrote a contemporary romance novella, no fantasy whatsoever, like fully real world, which got made into a Hallmark special last December. So that was fun.
Was it particularly silly to watch it being made?
It was so I mean, the actual movie came out pretty different from
Yeah.
the original book. Um, but the tone is somewhat similar. And they were gracious enough to like I went out for 2 days of filming, and if you watch really carefully in the Hanukkah party scene, you can see my butt. Because
Oh,
I like
good.
walked past in the background in the cameras. But I got to be in it. That was cool. It was very cool. Uh, I mean, they very much Hallmarkified it, but I will say also though that the Hallmark people, like the people on set, they're the nicest. I don't know whether it's because it was Hallmark or it's because they were Canadians, because this was in Vancouver. Um, but they were so nice, like so nice. Just like like the executive producer was like set dad who was just taking care of everybody, making sure that they put the shoes back on before they went outside. And do they have their enough jacket? Like in the most loving kind of way. Like
Yeah.
he's just like being dad to the whole set. And all of the actors were like super sweet and lovely people. Like all of the crew were so nice. And like they all were really happy to like talk to me about like I had all these stupid questions and they were really not like telling me all the stuff. So it was a really fun experience. It's if I would say if you liked one, you might like the other, but there's some substantial differences between the two because among other things, Hallmark is not allowed to have bad people, and it's one of the rules of people are allowed to be misguided or make mistakes, but no one's allowed to just
Oh,
be a terrible person.
yeah. Okay.
And in the original book, the male main character's parents they're awful. They're just awful people. And like that's a lot of the plot hinges on the fact that his dad especially is just kind of an abusive jerk. And you can't actually be, verbally or emotionally abusive to your children in a Hallmark movie.
Okay. Okay.
Which, okay, fair, I get it.
I mean, they're allowed to have their rules, and I get why they might have
Because
it,
they
right?
that's not
Yeah.
what people like. People want something to have on in the background while they're making cookies and doing the ironing. And I have like it is a romantic comedy, but I have had a couple people tell me that they cried, like actually cried, because apparently I did manage to channel a certain kind of emotionally abusive parent that a few people found like it did hit close to home. So I could see how it's somewhat less cozy than they were going for. That said, it also involves a cutthroat gingerbread competition. So, I mean,
All right. Well, now I have to go read it and then watch it.
the gingerbread competition is my favorite scene in the movie too. It does not play out the same as the book really at all, but they did a really good job, and they've got a bit with a blowtorch that's just hilarious.
What is the food that is in the Grimoire Grammar School? Because we got cookies and now garlic and
Unicorn cupcakes is the bigger.
okay.
We've got one like on the cover.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It starts all like the very first scene involves bringing brownies to the back to school picnic, which, given that canids can't have chocolate, is a major faux pas. So she starts off on the wrong foot right from the first sentence.
Okay, so on May 27th, I'm gonna go to my local bookstore, pick up the Grimoire Grammar School Parent Teacher Association, and buy a cupcake so I can read it and eat.
Excellent plan.
Yes.
I think a cupcake would go very well with this. Good pairing. Way
Perfect.
better than like just raw garlic. Like
Oh, oh God. Too much. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
It's lovely speaking with you. Thank you so much for having me.
And for anybody out there who has not yet read Dreadful, seriously, it's hilarious. It's got garlic. What more do you need?
Very little, very little in life.
And very, very soon, the Grimoire Grammar School Parent Teacher Association will be on shelves. So go grab a cupcake, go grab the book. And thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody out there has a lovely night. Bye.